Good morning, one and all. Warm welcome, all of you gathered here, and all the others joined us through online mode to the third day of workshop on Emerging Trends in Sustainable and Resilient Infrastructure 2023-24. Prayer is the word of truth, power of God, and powerful weapon of life. Let us rise for the silent prayer. Please be seated. The footnote section is taken by Engineer Sri Ganesh V. Nair, Founder and Chief Consultant GTC CS, on the topic EIA in Infrastructure Development. Sir has completed his BTech Civil Engineering with distinction from Kerala University in 1993. Sir has a vast qualification as BE Certified ECBC Master Trainer, Energy Modeler, MEP Designer, Edge Auditor, which showcase his commitment to sustainable practices. His contributions extend beyond design, with expertise in water and environment evident in numerous awards and recognitions. His impressive list of awards include prestigious National Energy Award for Innovative Product Design from CII in 2015 and national recognitions for the highest rated Platinum Green Home by IGBC in 2016. Notably, his performance in multi-home residential project awarded gold rating by IGBC. Existing building project for RBI awarded gold rating by IGBC. We are privileged to have Engineer Sri Ganesh V. Nair sir to share his insights and experiences with us. Also, I would like to welcome you, ma'am, Deepa ma'am, to this section. Once again, welcome, sir. Over to you.
Good morning. At the onset, my apologies for being late, thanks to our infrastructure. So, I don't know what is the background of each of these students gathered here or the people attending online. If you can just tell me that also, it will help. Okay. Okay. Subject. Right. Okay. Very good. Yeah. Thank you. Right. So, can I know from somebody as to why we are attending this session? Environment impact assessment. EIA, I hope you understand the full form. Environmental impact assessment. That's pretty common nowadays. With all the buildings being demolished and all that, I think people should be aware. But does anybody understand what exactly it is? Faculties, students, okay. I don't expect students, but faculties can come out with some opinion. Yes, partially right. How do you change the slide? Huh? But the slide changer illa. No issues. So we go to the next slide. The definition of environment. Otherwise, I don't read that. Can you tell me what is the definition of environment? I thought it was interactive. The classroom look, do you sit like this and gape? That means there is no transfer happening. It's only radio transmission, no reception. What do you mean by environment? That's one word which is closely linked to sustainability. So the first thing you got to understand is what is environment? What are we talking about? If I show you a loaf of bread, you understand what a loaf of bread is. So bread, butter, jam, you understand what is it. But what is environment? You need to have a concrete idea of what is environment. So that's a very common word, and I think you are starting to learn about environment since class 7 social studies geography. So all those who have gone to school only should answer. Okay. That is environment. Okay. Any other different opinion or additional opinion? Nobody has gone to class 7 in school? Please be free to answer. See, knowledge transfer doesn't happen in cramming in books. I tell you, our example of interviewing more than say 1,000 plus children passing out from various engineering colleges is pretty interesting. I would, I would term it a little diplomatically. It is interesting. The amount of knowledge that infiltrates into a student is actually less than 5%. The reason is there is no interaction. You are not interested in the subject. So you have to generate interest. The first thing is you should know what you are interested in. I want to watch a football match. So you know what is football, you know the basic rules, you know who are the players, you know what are the teams you like. Basic. You are interested in cooking. So you know what are the basic ingredients. So you are interested in environment. So you should at least know what is the definition of environment. So now you please come and tell me what is the definition of environment, because there is no point in moving forward without understanding what is environment. Orodhara, do you start from there? Malayalathi paranjalum kuzhapilla. I hope audience is English, so please continue in English. So you are talking about an ecosystem. An interaction means ecosystem. Okay, madam, what is your... I'll be asking everybody, don't worry. You want a mic, you can use the mic. Okay.
An environment consists of different segments like temperature, the living creatures, and some other non-living things which affects the living creatures, and everything consists in a mode.
Imagine it's like a box where everything is there.
Yes. For me, it's
You have to think, you put a lot of stuff in. So is that a box? Or is it wider?
wider enough.
So let us know.
So for me, environment is basically the surroundings with where we live, and it basically consists of all the things that we see, like living beings, non-living beings, plants, and the things that we use also to live. No, sir. No, biologically.
You are correlating environment with something which is biological.
Yeah.
So that is not. Non-living, somebody says, so you disagree.
So not exactly.
So you don't agree with it. What is your opinion?
Surroundings which consist of living and non-living things.
Surroundings is a very complex word. So I don't understand English too much, so please tell me what is surrounding.
The atmosphere.
Atmosphere is surrounding.
Yes.
I think something will add on to that. This is okay. We will talk this.
It is the
Harmony. Humans and plants, it live in harmony, right? That's another. Because the moment they become unharmonious, what will happen? Pollution is one of the byproducts. But unharmonious means there is something else. There is a husband and wife living in a house. As long as there is harmony, neighbors don't know. But the moment it becomes unharmonious, neighbors will know. That is harmony and lack of harmony. Yes, madam. What is your opinion? We just had a problem with surroundings. So we didn't understand surroundings. So ma'am, if you can explain surrounding, it will be easy. Phew, that is complex. Something simpler, ma'am. Harmony is a result, but what we are looking at the noun environment. Harmony is the result of something happening in the environment. But what exactly? Like a table, it has got a top and 4 legs. What is environment? We come back to the original question. So we have various opinions. What is yours? You can agree to somebody, you can disagree with somebody. So the table is open, no? Surroundings. Okay, so you come back to surroundings. Faculties are എല്ലാവരും അതുകൊണ്ടാണ് ഒന്നിച്ച് പറയുന്നത് എല്ലാവരും surroundings. Yes ma'am, what is your view? You should disagree with something. It's more. Oh. Okay, so it is earth. It is earth and surroundings. No, that is administrative procedure. But we should understand like AICT form fill ചെയ്യുന്ന പോലെയാണ്. Okay, so your concept is it's entire Mother Earth. Ma'am, what is yours? Nature. Nature, very, very complex word. So he is happy by nature. He is introvert by nature. ആ nature ആണോ? അതല്ല. Okay. വേറെ nature ഉണ്ട്. അതേതാ? Okay, so the same thing. So living things, surroundings, biotic, ഏതാണ്ടൊക്കെ ഒരു വാക്കുകളൊക്കെ. Okay, we can interact, right? Okay, so there is mutual interaction, and that is harmony. Good. Yes, ma'am. Okay. Okay. But there are no animals here. Okay. So outside and inside, everything. Yeah. So we are expanding a little bit now. Our environment space is increasing, right? Does environment vary? Like, is it constant or it varies? No, 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 no. Environment in this classroom, environment in the lobby, environment in the playground. So does it change? Environment in the library, movie hall, mall, car parking. Does it change? So environment changes. That change is affected by something which we have registered as certain parameters. Ma'am, you may add. Yeah. So that's your environment. So the environment in which you are participating is your environment. That may not necessarily be the neighbor's environment. So that is subjective. So we have understood there is a qualitative difference, there is a spatial difference, there is a subjective difference. Right? Yes, boys. It's a condition means condition has got two factors. It can either be a static environment or a dynamic environment. Which one? Dynamic. It always varies. അല്ലേ ഒരു ഓഡിറ്റോറിയത്തിൽ സിനിമ കണ്ടുകൊണ്ടിരിക്കുമ്പോൾ ഒരാൾ തുമ്മിയാൽ what happens? Everybody turns and looks at him. Why? That's called disruption. Disruption dynamic ആണോ static ആണോ? What class, what batch are you in? Which year? Final year. അപ്പോൾ ഒരുപാട് വിദ്യാഭ്യാസം നിറഞ്ഞിരിക്കുകയാണ്. പോരട്ടെ. അടുത്ത ആൾ പറയാം സഹായിക്കൂ ഇരുന്ന് സഹായിച്ചാൽ മതി Okay, where we exist is like morning bedroom we exist. From there, plants and, okay, all inclusive. So you agree with them. അവർ പറയുന്ന ടീച്ചറല്ലേ നാളെ കാണണ്ട എഗ്രി ചെയ്യുന്നതല്ലേ. വാട്ട് അബൌട്ട് യു? So nature, surrounding environment, it is all the same. Yes, you agree with them. What about you? Okay, so same. You are agreeing. You can say, I agree with teacher, I agree with her, I agree with her. അതാണ് എളുപ്പം. കാരണം ഈ പുതുതായിട്ടൊന്നും വരുന്നില്ല. പുതിയത് വരട്ടെ. യെസ്, പറയൂ. എഗ്രി, എളുപ്പമാണല്ലോ. എഗ്രി, അതെ അതെ. That is a problem with you people. You have to learn to disagree. ടീച്ചറോട് ഡിസഗ്രി ചെയ്യുന്ന സ്റ്റുഡൻസ് ആണ് ഭാവിയിൽ മിടുക്കന്മാരായി മാറുന്നത്, അല്ല മാഡം? ശരിയല്ലേ? കാരണം ടീച്ചർ ഒരു കൺഫൈൻഡ് എൻവയൺമെന്റിൽ നിന്നാണ്. ഷീസ് ഗോട്ട് ലിമിറ്റേഷൻസ് ബൈ AICT. യു ഡോണ്ട് ഹാവ്. ശരിയല്ലേ? AICT എഴുതി കൊടുക്കുന്ന കാര്യങ്ങളല്ലേ ചെയ്യേണ്ടത്. ഞാൻ ഉള്ള കാര്യം പറഞ്ഞതേ ഉള്ളൂ. ബട്ട് നൗ വെൻ വി റീഡ് ദ ഡെഫിനിഷൻ ബൈ ഡിക്ഷണറി, നിങ്ങൾ ഗൂഗിൾ ചെയ്ത് കഴിഞ്ഞാൽ ഇതാ കിട്ടാൻ പോകുന്നത്. It says the surroundings or conditions in which a person, animal or plant lives or operates. Very generic. എങ്ങും തൊടാതൊരു ഡെഫിനിഷൻ അല്ലേ? കാരണം അതിൽ ഉപയോഗിച്ചിരിക്കുന്ന പല വാക്കുകളുടെ അർത്ഥം we may not even understand what are the definitions of each of these words. For example, we were stuck with surroundings. Please go to the next slide. Does a bird worry about the environment? It doesn't have a textbook. It doesn't have to go to geography. Does a fish worry about environment? Worry. Be affected is not worry. Worry or be concerned? No. Or yes? No. So basically, everything that we are discussing is about us. We are the rightful owners of everything on this planet or the universe, and everything around should fit into our game, right? That's the whole plan. In the context of environment for humans, so we have excluded all other living species. Dead are anyway dead. So living species are not worried. They will be affected. Got it? Living species may not be concerned, but they will be affected. By whom? So, for human beings in context, we will read it as a combination of all living, and many people have said that statement. And I add another phrase to it, and their effects long term and short term. They take action, they have some action, they cohabit, there is harmony, disharmony. There are effects, short term and long term, right? Do we agree on that? Well, that's a very important aspect. A wrong marriage has got a short term effect and a long term effect, right? Seriously. A bad medicine, a bad food has long term and short term. So every action that we initiate in an environment triggers an effect. Is it right? Yeah? So you can either disagree or agree. ഞാൻ പറയുന്നതുകൊണ്ട് ശരിയാവണം. It may not be necessarily right because I am saying. You have to accept it in your head. Living or biotic, plants, animals, forest, fishery, birds, etc. Geography. Non-living are water. Water is non-living. Yeah? H2O. Right? It's a chemical. That's what we've been taught. There may be other philosophies about water, but for technicalities and science, it is non-living. H2O. Sunlight, land, all these are classified as non-living. Now, last paragraph is, effects include changes in the ecosystem caused by actions by man or nature. Now, we heard nature earlier. Right? We heard nature. So effects of nature. Can somebody give an example of an effect by nature? Very recent. Flood, earthquake. Tokyo there was an earthquake. Turkey there was an earthquake. Floods happened in some parts of India. Floods happened in other parts of the world. We call them as natural calamities. Do you know of a place called Joshimath? It's a subject of study by several technical institutions across India and the world. What is the problem in Joshimath? Students അറിയാൻ വഴിയില്ല കാരണം അത് ഇതിൽ വരുന്നില്ല ഈ റീൽസിലൊന്നും വരുന്നില്ല. So what is teacher മാര് പറയും, what is the problem in Joshimath? You know there is a place called Joshimath in India? അതാദ്യം ചോദിക്കണമല്ലോ. So there is a place called Joshimath which has been abandoned. Are you aware that it has been abandoned? All structures, all houses, all institutions have been abandoned. For what reason? ഒന്ന് ഫോണിൽ പെട്ടെന്ന് ഗൂഗിൾ ചെയ്യണ്ട, ഇങ്ങനെയൊക്കെ ചോദിക്കുമ്പോൾ ടക്കെന്ന് ഗൂഗിൾ ചെയ്ത് നോക്കണം ഇത് എന്ത് ചെയ്യല് പറയുന്നത്. Because of soil subsidence, soil sliding. മോർ സർക്കിളൊക്കെ പഠിക്കുന്നുണ്ടോ? മോറിന് മാത്രം അറിയായിരിക്കില്ല. ഇതൊക്കെ this is a direct demonstration of Moore circle in action. So you should try to relate when you see something happening. That is effect of nature as per the newspaper reports. But is it effect of nature? Uttarakhand, there was heavy floods. During the floods, several buildings on the sides of the river, they slid down like a pack of cards. Is it an act of nature or an act of man? No. A cloud burst is a natural phenomenon. But the building was not built by nature. So there is disharmony. Disharmony. They don't like each other. So what did nature do? Who is more powerful, man or nature? Always. So nature says, I don't agree. Please bring it here. I don't agree. Right? When you have floods, if the flood banks are not properly maintained, if the river basins are not properly maintained, what will happen? Alua. Okay? Or what you saw in various parts of the state in 2018. The rivers exceed their flow paths. Hydraulic regime. പഠിപ്പിക്കുന്നുണ്ടോ? ഇവിടെ അതൊക്കെ പഠിപ്പിക്കുന്നുണ്ടോ? ഹൈഡ്രോളിക് റെജീം എന്നൊക്കെ പഠിപ്പിക്കുന്നുണ്ടോ? മോദിയൻ സേട്ടൻ്റെ പുസ്തകമാണോ? പണ്ടത്. So these are effects that we observe, but what is the cause? So who is at fault? When there was heavy flood in Uttarakhand, is it nature at fault or is it man at fault? For human life loss, man is at fault. Right? Because he built structures at the corner of at the edge of the river. Nature is the cause. So there is an adjustment happening. So we should be aware that whenever ക്ലാസ്സിലെ ഒരു കുട്ടി ഭയങ്കരമായി ശല്യം ചെയ്യും, there is a child in the class who is constantly nagging and is a bothersome person for the teacher, there is a limit to which the teacher will ignore. After that, what will happen? There will be an outburst. They'll either throw him out of the school or out of the college or at least out of the class. Similarly, when you poke nature here and there, it will adjust. But when it is too much, ഒന്ന് ചെറുതായിട്ടൊന്ന് കുലുങ്ങും. So 2 lakh people die. So that is what happens. So don't play with nature. Not to play with nature is a statement which I can make in a crowd like this, 100 people, 30 people listening, with no ability to act. You can only listen. There is nobody in this room who has got any powers to act. That's what you think. Greta Thunberg did not think so at her age. So there is a possibility for you also to be proactive. For being proactive, to be part of an action when development is happening, you need to be aware. Where harmony exists, where disharmony happens. To understand this, you need to know what is the crux of the problem. EIA for infrastructure is an administrative requirement. But before that, we need to understand why EIA is required, right? ആരൊക്കെ എഴുന്നേറ്റിരിപ്പുണ്ട് കൈ വെക്കോ പകുതി പേര് ഉറങ്ങുക അല്ലെങ്കിൽ മലയാളം മനസ്സിലാവില്ല ഇങ്ങനെയല്ല കൈ ഇങ്ങനെ നോക്കി let's see if all of you are awake. Thank you very much. So that's good. So we go to the next slide, please. Okay. Now, name all the living beings that engage in activities that are likely to cause a change to the environment. Now we have a slight understanding of the environment. Name all the living beings that are likely to engage in activities that can cause a change in environment. What are the, list out all the names. One, two. Animals can cause a change to environment. Example. Which animal and how? Food cycle nahi. Cause a change in environment. Food cycle is a normal ecosystem. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 all are occupied by human beings. Living beings have no idea. We agreed earlier. They are not worried because they exist. They are bearing the effects of our actions. Right? The birds which are flocking around in the trees in this campus don't know Tokaj Engineering College what is being taught. They don't care if you teach computer science or if you teach IT or if you teach civil engineering, is it? No bird is bothered, is it? The squirrel who jumps along the trees is not bothered. Right? It is only human beings. It's all about us. That's what we think. Next slide, please. So, we agree. It is only us humans who are blessed with the ability to extract. Please mark the words. Extract, transform and recreate the environment to suit our needs. Why? Growing population. And most importantly, ever-growing desires, aspirations. Right? Because civil engineering department cannot take in more students if there is no construction likely to happen in the next 20 years. Right? There was a time when there was nobody going, 1990s or 1980 ends. There were no students aspiring to become civil engineers. We were the very few people who thought civil engineers are good. Everybody was doing IT, electronics, electrical and stuff like that. But even now construction is happening. After 30, 35 years, even now buildings are being built. So another 30 years and more buildings will be built, right? That is why you people are civil pass what will they do? So construction, infrastructure development, growing population demands, aspirations, desire, building a house, building a shopping mall, these are all aspirations and desires. It's a never-ending chase to achieving monetary prosperity, whether it is a house, a family, a society, a state or a country. The aspiration is all driven by economy. Trying to become the third largest economy, trying to become some largest economy, trying to become more prosperous than my neighbor is all aspirations. Driven by economy. It's all driven by economy. Agreed? You can disagree. No, it is not like that. Building is my passion. You can say it is like an art form. I build buildings not to live. I just make buildings. Can you show me one building where there is no function? India Gate. I'm just telling you, if I look at it, there is no function. It's there. Gateway of India. What is the function? If a talk is in the entrance, what is the function? No, I'm just saying, some structures are built with no function, but they create an identity. They are built with a purpose of identity. So there are some structures which are built for that purpose. There are others which are built for function. Let's go to the next slide. EIA documentation process is an extremely boring process. നല്ല രീതിയിൽ ഉറക്കം വരാൻ സാധ്യതയുണ്ട്. Because it's totally administrative. But why I am taking this introduction is, when you fill or when you open up a part of the documentation process, if you know why you are doing it, എന്തിനാ ചെയ്യുന്നതെന്നുള്ള അറിഞ്ഞാൽ, then it makes matters easier. So you have a connect. Otherwise, if you are just going to delve into EIA process, half of you will not be awake after 10 minutes. Because you are not connected. There is nothing that you have to do in EIA as of now. We as professionals have to do it every day. But in this room, probably the purpose is to trigger an interest in two parts. One is the personal part, where as individuals you have an action to take. And as professionals, when you come out of this institution or when you are part of this institution or as an institution, if you become an NAVET accredited consultant, then you can do this act on a commercial basis. So there are very few consultants in this domain. So that's why I'm saying, if you look at it with interest, if you understand what is a connect, then there is a purpose to listening to it. That is why I'm trying to give you an introduction of what is the concept of environment. What in a group of 20 people you may have diverse opinions, but it's okay. That is the environment. So here what our aim is to understand why we are doing it. That is why I went through the previous portion. Now, continuous engagement in development is a process that we are seeing now. We have seen huge progress right now, and it doesn't come without a cost, not the cost of money, but every intervention that happens comes at a cost. In this context, I have written infrastructure development becomes a continual need for human progress. Is that right? Is that right? You say yes or no? Yes. So go to the next slide. What is infrastructure? Does Tokaj Institute have an infrastructure? Can you name what are the parts of the infrastructure? There are various infrastructures. You can hear me speak through this mic. There is a speaker system available. There is a Wi-Fi connectivity available. All these are the result of some hardware being there, some software being there. Yeah? Is that infrastructure? Adisthana Saugaryam, Malayalam. Basic necessity, right? There is a road, there is a building, okay? There is comfort air conditioning, there is lighting, right? So these are all part of the infrastructure. There is a library, there are toilets, right? There is a sewage treatment plant, I believe. There should be. There is a basic firefighting system in place. There are signages. All these are infrastructure. Do we agree? Are you connecting to your own institution? Does a chair form a part of an infrastructure? It does. Because if the chair is not there, a function will not happen. The table forms a part of the infrastructure. We call it interiors. But that is again another environment where you need to provide those facilities so that the primary function can happen. So, in our context, right now the government has imposed certain guidelines. I would not say restrictions, I will say guidelines, which you need to follow so that the impact of the development is reduced. A grain of sand in the soil ceases to see the sky the moment you place a brick on it. For its lifetime it will not see the sun, right? You place a brick on it and it's finished, forever, buried. So if you can think for that grain of sand, then you have concern. It all starts with concern. The government becomes concerned when there is a calamity, when there is a problem with the population, when there is a problem with the infrastructure being lost, lots of money being lost, or when a railway line gets washed away in a flood. Whose loss is it? Whose loss is it? ആരുടെ നഷ്ടമാണ്? Huh? Why do you murmur? Speak out loud. There is no society. It is our loss. It is taxpayers' money lost. Who is the custodian of the taxpayers' money? It is the government. So it is our loss. Whose responsibility it is to stop more losses like that? The custodian of taxpayers' money is supposed to make laws to ensure that such losses do not happen in future, right? It is part of that process that you have got the Environment Conservation Act, etc. coming in. So only those people who are interested should Google it. Those who are not interested should not. There are laws which are mandated, which force any person who is trying to do a development to go through a process wherein the impact of their development or construction activity has to be monitored and verified. That is impact assessment, right? Impact assessment. Now we will start from this side and we will ask each of them to explain what is impact assessment. Okay? Ready? ഏത് സൈഡിൽ നിന്നാണ്? ഇവിടെ നിന്നാണ് ഇവിടെ നിന്നാണ്? ഇവിടെ ഉള്ളൊരു No, what is impact assessment? Let's hear it out. You can sit there and tell. Start. ഇവർ പറഞ്ഞിട്ട് കാര്യമില്ല. So you go to the next third person. They came late. Yes, ma'am. Please tell. What is your idea of impact assessment? If you are awake, you will be able to say. This is how I take sessions. I don't allow people to sleep. So please tell me, what is impact assessment? അടുത്ത ആള് റെഡിയാക്കി വെച്ചോ. ഇവിടെ ഉള്ളവർക്ക് ഒരുപാട് ടൈമുണ്ട്. നിങ്ങൾ നെക്സ്റ്റ് ആണ്, പെട്ടെന്ന് റെഡിയാക്കി. Say impact. Make it simple. See, everybody can answer it. It's an English statement. Impact assessment. Impact is, what is the translation? Effect. Assessment. Ille? So please explain now. Environment impact assessment choichilla. Impact assessment of anything. It has got an impact. So the assessment is whether the nail went into the board or not. You are validating a result. Hello? So those who are asleep, please wake up. Next question will come. The point is, it is very difficult to evoke interest in such subjects. I've been training people since 2005. It is now 18 years. But even now, it is so difficult to educate somebody about something that is going to happen in your neighborhood. Unless you become an affected party, you are not willing to listen. That is the problem. You understand? When you are living in a colony, crossroad 4 is your house, crossroad 2, a house settles. As long as crossroad 4, your house is not settled, you are not bothered. Tammanam oru veedu thaazhe poi. Are you aware? Do you read newspapers? That's the first question. Very doubtful. I don't think anybody reads newspapers. There is a lot of activity other than movies that happens in this world. So, there was a building which went down by 1 floor in Tammanam. right? Do you know why it happened? Pipeline road അറിയോ? Huh? എറണാകുളത്ത് anybody from Ernakulam? So you know pipeline road? What is below the pipeline road? The name tells you. It is pipelines. So for pipelines, what would they have done? They would have excavated. After excavation, they lay the pipe. Then what would they have done? They have backfilled it. If the backfilling was not proper, what will happen? That road will settle. But if they have not backfilled the embankments also properly, what will happen? That entire area will settle. Do you know what is saturation in soil? Saturation? Soil mechanics ഒക്കെ പഠിപ്പിക്കൂ ഇവിടെ. പഠിപ്പിക്കും. So what is saturation? There are no civil engineers here. At least teachers should know soil saturation. What is saturation of soil? Water. So what is the result? What is that condition called? Liquefaction. What happens in earth? When soil becomes saturated, it will flow. ഇല്ലേ? ഇവിടെ ഫ്ലോ ചെയ്യില്ല. Similarly, these factors have to be assessed by somebody when they were laying the pipeline. This building just sank. On the place where you're residing is a 2-storied house. Early morning you wake up, you try to open the door, there is soil. Then you go to the first floor and say, now you can walk to the road. Just imagine a situation, somebody's house it happened. So because it was somebody's house, I am not concerned. Go back and you'll understand the problem was when they laid the pipeline, when they identified those areas, they did not do their job properly. There was no EIA. There was nobody to regulate that activity. Even though basic engineering should have been done, there was nobody to regulate that activity. When these buildings were constructed on the edge of the river Ganga in Uttarakhand, nobody regulated it. Because if somebody had regulated, so many lives would not have been lost. Today we are bothered about CRZ. Anybody has heard of the term CRZ? Coastal Regulation Zone. Coastal, second word is regulation. What does that mean? It restricts, regulates. Regulation means it is restricting your action. Ille? Niyandranam, Malayalam. Your action will be restricted. So, why that rule was required? To prevent arbitrary construction along water bodies, it was required. Primarily it was along the sea coast, then it was extended to backwaters, then it was extended to rivers. Is it? Progressively. Why it was required? When you are building in a river basin, what else do you expect? Adutha flood ningal povu ente kude. You'll go as a boat. So these restrictions have to be applied to avoid stupid construction. Civil engineers are the direct, the first-hand culprits for making stupid construction. For that, you need to know the law. How many of you know the Wetland Act? In college, you should teach them the law. KMBR, Wetland Act, CRZ, all these rules are required. Because what happens is immediately after passing out, they will go to Department of Urban Affairs and take an engineer A grade license without knowing head or tail of what is that. They will be capable of signing and stamping a drawing without knowing what are these rules. Wetland Act. Nobody has bothered to read. Wetland Act, you are having restrictions again. So where you cannot build. The whole idea of such a training session is to make you aware that there are regulations. You cannot just go and build anything anywhere. And that is for a cause. It is not restrictive. It is regulatory in nature, so that the net result is nobody dies. There is no property loss in future. Anybody heard of global warming? Global warming, somebody's heard of it? What is it? Rise of temperature. Pressure cooker alle. Rise of temperature. Why should it rise? Rise means it has to be contained body. Well, huh? No. First of all, you in the body temperature. My body temperature rises means there is a problem. In the contained body. Okay, this is a contained body. When you put a saucepan on a gas, it is a contained body. When water starts getting hot, it is rise in temperature. In the case of Earth, is it a contained body? Yes or no? Geography 6th class. Contained by what? Atmosphere. There are 4 layers. What are the layers? ഇപ്പോൾ 7ാം ക്ലാസ്സിൽ പോയവരുണ്ട്. Stratosphere, ionosphere, troposphere, all that stuff. You remember those spheres. So, what does that do? It prevents. It allows the entry of sunlight. Then, if it allows the entry of sunlight, it should also allow the exit of extra heat. Does it allow? Does it allow? നിങ്ങൾ കുളിക്കുമ്പോൾ വെയിറ്റ് കൂടുമോ? അല്ല, ഒരു 100 liters വെള്ളം ഉപയോഗിച്ച് കുളിച്ചാൽ 100 ലിറ്റർ വെള്ളം വെയിറ്റ് കൂടുമോ? Why? This is a one-way valve. Your skin is a one-way valve. It can allow perspiration to come out, but it will not allow water to go in. Right? എല്ലാവർക്കും അങ്ങനെയാണോ? മനുഷ്യർക്കൊക്കെ അങ്ങനെയാ അല്ലേ? Earth, how does it work? So when we talk about global warming, we are talking about the accumulation of certain type of gases which leads to rise in temperature, which leads to what? No, that is okay. That is a name. But what does it lead to? Adu kondendunndavu. Rise in sea water level. But seawater is constant volume. How does it rise? It is melting of glaciers. But the total water, if you look at the total water equation in the earth, the water carried in the atmosphere, plus the total fresh water carried in the glaciers, plus the water carried in the oceans, water bodies, that is constant. So how can it rise? Does it rise? You are saying it rises. So, simple equation, it's a contained body you said, which means moisture doesn't exist after the second sphere. Seriously. As far as that, even when we launch rockets also, we know that after the second sphere it doesn't rise. But what happens? If glaciers have to melt and rise at them, what is happening? Where is that water coming from? You should think, basic maths. That is not the purpose of my study. I am saying when we talk about something, you should please try to go to the next step. As engineers, it is basic expectation from the society that you will not restrict yourself to reading headlines. You have to read the rest of the news. So, please figure out what is the equation and why water level will rise. But what is the result? The result is Cochin city will not be there. That is the result. Maldives is already contemplating moving out. Lakshadweep may not be there. This is the result. It's direct. It is direct. Everybody who is living in Cochin will move to Arakundam because it is higher. Have you seen that trend? It has already happened. Mulanthurthi is now very expensive. This was a land which nobody used to come. But Mulanduruthi is selling at 3 lakhs per cent now and more. This is socio-economic transformation on account of climate change. It is happening next door. നമ്മുടെ തൊട്ടടുത്ത് നടക്കുന്നു ഇല്ലേ? What I am saying is not from the moon, it is right next door. When the prices of land increase, when there are so many constructions happening, there is a reason. People are coming here for fresh water, and everybody is now understood that 2050 Kochi will be submerged. It's accepted. What are people like us trying to do? Make sure that it doesn't submerge, because we live there. So as a part of that, we signed a few protocols. Government of India has signed a few protocols. Are you aware of those? Google ചെയ്താൽ മതി. Montreal Protocol. That was long back. That was for a purpose. At least teachers should know. Because when you're talking sustainability, that was probably the first action taken by the leaders of the world together to figure out a way to cut down on GHG emissions, that is greenhouse gas emissions. Right? That was one of the first steps. Then came the Paris Protocol, Paris Agreement. What was it about? You should read. ഇവർക്ക് seminar project ഒന്നുമില്ലേ? You should consider those who are harping about sustainability should at least know these things. 10 പ്ലാവ് നിൽക്കുന്നതിൻ്റെ ഇടയിൽ കൊണ്ട് 2 ചെടി നടുന്നതല്ല എൻവയൺമെൻറ്റ് സേവിങ്. ഫോട്ടോ എടുക്കുന്നു, സോഷ്യൽ മീഡിയയിൽ ഇടുന്നു, എന്നിട്ട് ചെടിയുടെ കൂട്ടത്തിൽ നിന്ന് സെൽഫി എടുക്കുന്നു. ദാറ്റ് ഈസ് നോട്ട് സേവ് ദി എൻവയൺമെൻറ്റ്. മേളിൽ 2 പ്ലാവ് നിൽക്കേണ്ട, അതെല്ലാവരും കാണാം. This is reality. What I am saying is things that are going to happen to us, your children, your next generation is going to face it. And that's a fact. Because we are facing part of it. The next generation, this is the new generation, and their next generation is going to have the worst effect. That is 2070 onwards, 2050, 2060 onwards. So these are real things. These are real things. My purpose of speaking to you other than EIA is, this is EIA. Understanding the impact of our actions, our construction methodologies today, assessing them on an administrative document is a procedure. But trying to make you understand what exactly is EIA is what I am doing. GHG emissions is the first impact. Rampant constructions happening. You know, who is the biggest culprit for GHG emissions in the world? Top 3 countries. First is, since the last 100 years, they have been first. China was not. China is only 30 years old. It is the US. They are the biggest contributors. Second is Russia. Third is now China. We don't figure in that list at all, but still we are speaking about this. So GHG emissions, all these things are realities. Global warming is happening. 11:30? ആണോ? അല്ല, I am happy. എനിക്ക് വേണേൽ full day സംസാരിക്കാം. Right. We'll take a short break, then 5-10 minutes. Because please be careful, you know, I'll ask some of these questions when we come back. So we'll have a short break for tea now. Right. Sir പറഞ്ഞ പിന്നെ Okay, Elarum, I hope everybody is back after a refreshing tea. രക്ഷപ്പെട്ടെന്ന് വിചാരിച്ച വേറെ ആരെങ്കിലും വരാനുണ്ടോ? Okay, so we'll continue where we left off. I had said that we will be coming back to the concept of global warming. And what is it? I hope all the children sitting here can give clear-cut explanations. നമുക്ക് ഇവിടെ സ്റ്റാർട്ട് ചെയ്യാം. യെസ്, പറഞ്ഞോളൂ. അവിടെ ഇരുന്ന് പറഞ്ഞാൽ മതി. Rise of temperature of the earth's surface. Anybody differs? Earth's surface temperature rising. Is it correct? Say yes or no. Earth's no, say yes or no, right or wrong. Please. Loudly. She said Earth's surface temperature rising. Is it right or wrong? Is it right or wrong? Wrong. So they differ. But she is right. You are also right. Continue. Earth's surface temperature rising due to I had given a protocol called Montreal Protocol. Which year was that? I didn't Google it. It's available on your fingertip, but none of you guys had Googled. Ranbir Kapoor's kochinte peru endanu choicha paranju tharum. That is a problem. You are worried about things which have no impact on your life. Waste. So when was Montreal Protocol? 19? പറഞ്ഞോ? You can be wrong. അല്ല, കുറച്ചുകൂടെ പോട്ടെ ബാക്കിലേക്ക്. അതിന് കുറച്ചുകൂടെ ബാക്കിലേക്ക് പോട്ടെ. ഏത് ഇയറാ മാഡം? 1987 ആണോ? ഓക്കെ, പോട്ടെ, ഏതോ ഒരു വർഷം. So that is long back. So by this time, most of the countries have adopted Montreal Protocol, and it was about reduction of. So that used to be a reason. What else? She will say. Vehicles. Okay, what kind of gases come out of a vehicle? NO2 is nitrous oxide. Okay. Nitrogen dioxide. Okay. NO2. Carbon monoxide. Okay. So what do these people do? What is the effect? She will say. No. She said vehicles pollute by releasing CO2. What is the problem? CO2 vandonda namkenda. Vavandote. How? How can CO2 increase? You have to stop breathing if you say CO2 causes a problem. Every breath that you take, you release CO2. So then what is the problem? I'll come back to you. Now tell me what is the problem. CO2 and UV rays, are they connected? No. But she will tell you. You now tell me what is the other reason. കേൾവി മാത്രമേ ഉള്ളൂ, കൂടെ പറയുകയും വേണം. യെസ് മാഡം പറയൂ. അതൊക്കെ നിർത്തി, ഞങ്ങൾ അടച്ചു. വേറെ. So we were discussing global warming and the causes. She said CFC. We have got a protocol which is now roughly 50 years old. So that is in place. She said CO2, NO2, etc. I agree, but how? Other than SOx and CO and NO, which other gas is the primary cause of global warming? Name of the chemical. Huh? Methane, yes. അവിടെ ഗൂഗിൾ ചെയ്യുന്നുണ്ടല്ലേ? So, methane is a cause, right? Why? മീഥേൻ്റെ ഈ കെമിസ്ട്രി ഒന്നും പഠിച്ചിട്ടില്ലേ നിങ്ങൾ? ഈ എൻട്രൻസ് എക്സാം ഒന്നും പാസ്സായിട്ടില്ലേ? ഇല്ലേ, 12ാം ക്ലാസ്സിലൊക്കെ എൻട്രൻസ് ഒക്കെ ഉണ്ടായിരുന്നു ഞങ്ങളൊക്കെ പഠിക്കുമ്പോൾ. ഇവിടെ ഉണ്ടോ എൻട്രൻസ് ഒക്കെ? ഹീറ്റ് മീറ്റ് എന്നൊക്കെ പറഞ്ഞിട്ടില്ലേ? ഇല്ലേ? വാട്ട് ഈസ് ദ ബ്രേക്ക് ഡൗൺ ഓഫ് CH3? CH4. CO2. Again you are coming back to her. What is the problem with carbon dioxide? Yes. Maximum. Right. So, for you, what is the problem with carbon dioxide? Because I have got another 5 minutes for this discussion and we will go back to the procedure. About pass the question. അല്ലേ? പറയൂ. പാസ് ചെയ്യാൻ പാടില്ല. ഒരു പ്രാവശ്യം പാസിംഗ് അലൗഡ് ഉള്ളൂ. That goes against which law? യൂണിവേഴ്സൽ ഗ്യാസ് ലോ അറിയോ? അറിയില്ലേ? നിങ്ങളൊന്നും സ്കൂളിൽ പോയിട്ടില്ലേ? അപ്പോൾ ദാറ്റ് ഈസ് അഗെയിൻസ്റ്റ് ഗ്യാസ് ലോ. അപ്പോൾ എന്താണ് സാർ പറയൂ? See, we talk about what I'm coming to is, we talk about sustainability, we talk about greenhouse gas emissions, we make seminars, we talk about we give lectures, we plant trees. What is the reason എന്ന് മനസ്സിലാക്കണ്ടേ? So my suggestion is, please understand what is the reason. You know bits and pieces here and there, but try to understand the whole concept and logic so that our interest in sustainability is retained. Otherwise what will happen is, with partial knowledge, you will lose track and you will sideline it. But whatever, you are the very few people who have expressed interest in sustainability at least, which is a good thing. So to retain the interest, I suggest you should read a little more. കാരണം ഹെഡ്ലൈൻ മാത്രം വായിച്ച് നിർത്തരുത്. There is a news below. ആ ഡീറ്റെയിൽ മനസ്സിലാക്കണം. If you say CO2 is a problem, you should understand why it is a problem. Because it's basic chemistry in action. So, all these gases contributing to greenhouse effect and all that stuff, sea level rise. Sea level rise causes flooding a problem. Flooding is a problem. But rise in atmospheric temperature creates another problem. What is that? Rise in atmospheric temperature creates another major problem. No, so what is the result? No, that is okay, that is basic. നിങ്ങളൊക്കെ പഠിച്ചുകൊണ്ടിരുന്ന സമയത്ത്, when you were in school, June 1st was the school opening day. You remember? ഇല്ലേ? One of the major ingredients of a child's school bag used to be an umbrella. Invariably it used to rain on June 1st. Now it doesn't. Why? No. My question is, it's slightly simpler. Why does it not rain on June 1st now? Last so many years, it has not rained on June 1st. Poppy kudega poi. That's called offset monsoon. We live in an age where we have an offset monsoon. It affects agriculture. It affects the sowing of seeds. That affects our food policy. That affects us, because the food that is supposed to come to us in time will not be grown because offset monsoon. ഫുള്ളി ഒരു ഗ്രോൺ ആയിട്ട് നിൽക്കുന്ന വയലുകളിൽ മഴ പെയ്താൽ എന്ത് സംഭവിക്കും? നിങ്ങൾക്കറിയാവോ? ഒരു അപ്പാർട്ട്മെന്റിൽ താമസിക്കുന്ന കുട്ടിയോട് പാൽ എവിടുന്ന കിട്ടുന്നതെന്ന് ചോദിച്ചാൽ അതെന്ത് മറുപടി പറയും? സുരേന്ദ്രൻ ചേട്ടൻ കൊണ്ടുവരുന്നതെന്ന് പറയും അല്ലേ? പുള്ളി കവറിൽ കൊണ്ടു കൊടുക്കും. അതേപോലെ അരി എവിടുന്നാണ് കിട്ടുന്നതെന്ന് ചോദിച്ചാൽ എന്ത് പറയും? സൂപ്പർ മാർക്കറ്റിൽ നിന്നാണ് കിട്ടുന്നത്. നെല്ല് എന്ന് പറയുന്ന സാധനം അറിയില്ല. നിങ്ങൾക്കറിയാവോ നെല്ല്? അറിയോ? താങ്ക് ഗോഡ്. വിളഞ്ഞു നിൽക്കുന്നത്, അതായത് ഫുള്ളി ഗ്രോൺ റൈസ് പാഡി കൾട്ടിവേഷൻ ചെയ്തിരിക്കുന്ന ഒരു ഫീൽഡിൽ മഴ പെയ്താൽ എന്ത് സംഭവിക്കും? ദാറ്റ് എൻറ്റയർ ക്രോപ്പ് ഈസ് വാഷ്ഡ് ഔട്ട്. ഇങ്ങനെ വീഴും ഇല്ലേ? ചീഞ്ഞു പോവും. Climate change affects agriculture directly. Shift in monsoons affects agriculture directly. So it has got a huge impact. So one vehicle emitting CO2 can change the way agriculture happens. That is environment impact. We said environment consists of everything that is around us. It also includes the cultivation patterns. So we have to be very clear. See, you should all do research and learn more. There is a huge subject. United Nations food policy is something which is going to come next. There is a huge disparity in food. Some countries have a lot of food, some countries don't have food. Some countries have a lot of water, some countries don't have. So there is a lot of disparity. Now this disparity cannot be solved like this. You need to understand why this is happening, how climate change is impacting. So some countries which used to be poor now are becoming rich. Some countries which used to be very rich are now going down. So these are things which are happening around us. You can trace everything down to environment changes. Everything. Each and everything that happens around us is environment change. Our food habits changing is environment change, because we are flooded with advertisements of very tasty looking stuff on billboards. So we are desperate to go and have that for lunch or dinner. Is it not? So that is environment. Now we come to our core area, which is construction. We said infrastructure. So have you got the backdrop that we've got a problem at hand? There is a situation where GHG emissions are on the rise, and that is to be regulated. That is a basic problem, right? So to address that basic problem, we have to figure out solutions. So that is through regulation and through banning of certain things. So like HCFCs are banned. Similarly, there will be some regulation. Coastal regulation zone is a small rule, because it is only regulating construction, but how you construct is not regulated. For that, there is something called the Kerala Energy Conservation Building Code, KSECBC. You should learn about that also. They'll have free available online. It is all free. All this material for knowledge is free. You don't have to pay 1 rupee. So we will go to infrastructure. We discussed the kind of infrastructure that we have here. We have a road. We have classrooms, we have buildings, and sewage network, water supply, sanitation network, communication systems. All these are forming the part of the infrastructure. Thinking on a country scale, we are having highways, railway stations, airports, ports, shipping ports. All these things come under large scale infrastructure. So there are different scales of infrastructure. All of these are infrastructure. Now, the impact that these types of infrastructures create on the environment will be different. Something that happens in Tokaj Institute, for example, will be limited to the area that is in and around this place. Seriously, right? How many kilometers does the Tokech bus go to pick up its students? എത്ര ദൂരം വരെ പോവും? എറണാകുളത്തൊക്കെ പോവോ? Does it go to Ernakulam? Aluva. What is the distance? 40 kilometers? Ernakulam is 30 kilometers. Muvattupuzha? Huh? That is another 30 kilometers. 25-30 kilometers. So roughly, Tokech Institute has contributed to fossil fuel emissions due to transportation systems in a radius of 40 kilometers. Your buses are emitting CO2, CO, NO2, NO3 in 40 kilometer radius. So is that an environment impact due to this institution? So it is not restricted to your 26 acres. It is also extending beyond to up to 30-40 kilometers. Therefore, development of an infrastructure, however small it may be, has an impact in a nearby surrounding area. 50 kilometer radius is a huge space. ഈ ബസ് എല്ലായിടത്തും കൂടെ പോവില്ലേ? ചെറിയ ചെറിയ വഴി കൂടെയൊക്കെ പോവില്ലേ? മെയിൻ റോഡിൽ മാത്രമേ പോവുള്ളൂ. Does it travel only on the main roads or it goes into interiors also? So the main roads are already polluted. So you are adding that many grams of CO2, whatever gases into that. So you contribute. Imagine 100 such institutions coming up in this area. 100 such institutions coming up. What is going to happen? All of them will have buses. It will be schools, colleges, engineering colleges, medical colleges, hotel management, all these kind of different institutions, all of them will have buses. They will all contribute. So infrastructure development has got impacts beyond its boundaries, right? That is what we are trying to study. Go to the next slide. We just mentioned that facilities for general public use such as roads, telecommunications, railways, water supply, public parks, schools, universities can be mentioned as public infrastructure. Is this a public infrastructure? Where the public can come and interact is a public infrastructure. So public can come here. Every 4 years the demography of the college changes, new students come in, old students go out. Is it not? So these essential systems and facilities aid in the economy. Now it is assumed that you are building engineers. It is assumed. Is my assumption correct? Yes or no? It is an assumption that there are engineers being created here. So I hope that assumption is right. They are supposed to contribute to the economy in one way or the other, which you will. Definitely, you will figure out a way of finding out what suits you and what does not. Public infrastructure. Next slide, please. Soft infrastructure. I had mentioned earlier the infrastructure that goes into making this room operational is the lighting, the air conditioning, the mechanism which helps us project it, this audiovisual system, several other systems which are software and low voltage hardware that goes into making this happen. That is all soft. Now on a larger scale also, when BSNL or VSNL sets up a gateway, internet gateway, that is also soft infrastructure. Telecommunications networks, Geo, Vodafone, Idea, whatever, they are all soft infrastructure. They have a hardware, but they contribute to the soft part of it. You cannot see your signal. Then you come to the hard infrastructure, which is the physical infrastructure, which is all the roads, bridges, highways, railways, etc. Plus these towers and all that. So you are going into a sort of an industrialized economy with this hard infrastructure in place. All of them have some role to play in GHG emissions. They have some role to play in socio-economic impacts. The biggest example I can tell you is, right now, Has anybody traveled from Cochin to Trivandrum? By car or by bus? Has anybody traveled recently? Okay. There is a lot of highway construction work happening, right? When Palarivattam bridge was decommissioned the first time, was anybody using that road earlier? When they decommissioned it, all the people had to use the side roads below. Was there an impact? Impact of construction, impact of decommissioning. Both were there. So wrongly constructed building can have an impact. When you decommission a building, it has an impact. When you demolish a building, it has an impact. So constructing wrongly, Marad was an example where you had an impact which is due to demolition. So wrong construction, people not knowing bylaws, people not knowing the rules, built it and it is demolished for some reason. So we should be very aware of hard infrastructure, how to keep it and place it. It has got an impact. All of them ultimately combine to give you GHG emissions, making life difficult. And the summary story is making life difficult for you, for your generations to come, for people who are traveling through this place, for your neighbors, everybody. So the socio-economic setup and the local neighborhood is affected. ഇത് മനസ്സിലായോ? മനസ്സിലായോ? കണ്ണ് തുറന്നുറങ്ങാൻ എനിക്കും അറിയാം. അല്ല ഇതിന് ക്വസ്റ്റ്യൻസ് വരുമ്പോൾ ആൻസർ പറയണേ. Next please. So these are just snapshots of, see, one good thing is the pace at which infrastructure development is happening in India now. Every civil engineer can be assured of employment, even if you know something. But knowing something is important. Knowing everything is difficult, but knowing something is very important. എന്തെങ്കിലും ഒന്നറിയണം. So when you are taken for an interview, out of the so many subjects that you clear in 4 years, you should be thorough about at least one subject. If it is soil, you should be good at soil. If it is highways, you should be good at highways. If it is railways, you should be good at railways. If it is structures, you should be good at structures. But not knowing any of these will create a problem. So if it is sustainability, be good at it. So you should know end to end. What causes, what are the mitigation measures. These are the various infrastructure elements that have to be built. Next please. There is something written, is it correct? When this was built, what was this earlier? It was a rubber plantation, right? And rubber plantation has got trees. So when you deforest, does it have an impact? So every construction is accompanied by deforestation, right? When you cut down trees, two things happen. What are the two things? CO2 sequestration എന്താണെന്നറിയോ? When there is CO2 emission happening, there is only one friend of human beings who takes in all the CO2. What is that? Huh? Trees. Mainly trees. Plants are large trees. They accept all the CO2 that you generate. So you can continue with creating CO2 if you have compensatory tree planting. So they will compensate each other and you can live peacefully. But if you cut trees and then build only this, there is a problem. So there is an imbalance. That is where you have a issue, the deforestation. When I gave you an example of this institution, there is deforestation. There may be compensatory plantation. There may be planting of fruit-bearing trees. There may be landscaping. So all that compensates to a certain extent, but it does not take away the original landscape. The original landscape is gone. When you use timber in construction anywhere, whether it is buildings or highways, shuttering, you need a lot of timber. Again, you are cutting trees. National highway construction requires lot of earth filling. Where does it come from? Mala murchondu. They cut through hills. Small mountains are cut. Environment impact. The construction may be happening in Alleppey, but the hill goes from Muvatuira. Two things are happening. One is loss of forest. Second is fossil fuel consumption, because all these tipper lorries will be carrying this earth right through 40, 50, 60 kilometers. So the contribution of emissions is to be evaluated at the basic level when you do environment impact assessment. These are all impacts of constructing a highway. I'm just giving a small example. Same way when you build a building, there are these factors which go into play. So environment impact means it does not limit itself to the place of construction, it extends far beyond. For Alappuzha, you are making a highway, but its impact is felt in Muvatuira or Kodamangalam or those places where they are cutting off hills. Is it not? The people who had got access to oxygen in those areas due to the trees will have no longer oxygen, or they will have depleted oxygen. Construction happening in Alappuzha, effect felt in Muvatuira. This is also environment impact. So we have to be careful about analyzing each and every small aspect that goes into the development. All these is tabulated in the form of studies. We'll come to that. Next slide, please. Now, this is a portal which is very easy for everybody to access. It's called Parivesh. It is the Ministry of Environment portal. All details are available in this website, again free of cost, no money. Whatever I'm telling you, I'm just taking it from Parivesh and describing it to you. This till from now onwards. Till now, whatever I said is my opinion. But now onwards, it's administrative. So we have to follow the system. Whatever is prescribed in the rule book, whatever is prescribed in the guideline, we have to follow as it is. So these guidelines, if you can just check with Parivesh. Next slide. One more next slide. Previous, sorry. Yeah, okay. So you see this notification? It is mandatory to obtain environmental clearance for development projects. Mandatory means it is a rule. Green buildings, for example, is not mandatory. Whenever it's your choice, it's your commitment. But Kerala State Energy Conservation Building Code is a part of Kerala Municipal Building Rules, which means Energy Conservation Building Code is implemented in Kerala through Kerala Municipal Building Rules, which means if you don't comply, you don't get your permit. If you got your permit somehow, it can be revoked. Got it? So rule is a rule. This is a rule. You have to do it. I may do it in LA. You have to do it. So the compliance has to be there. Government can withdraw your permit anytime, which means Ketram Panadu in the Kariditi, don't be under the assumption that it cannot be broken down. At any moment, if the government decides to withdraw the permit, Ketram has to be removed. The building has to be removed. So we should understand rules very clearly. When you go, if you are willing to follow a career in civil engineering and construction and infrastructure, please be aware of all the rules. It is very important to be aware of the rules. So there are classifications, category A and category B projects. Category A projects are the bigger ones which require clearance from the central government. Category B projects are the ones for which we can take an approval from Trivandrum, state approval. State Environment Impact Assessment Authority will be doing the approvals for that. So those are the smaller projects. So the categorization is very clear. Yeah, please. Now I have taken the example of highways because that's something which we can see. When I gave you the example of a work happening in Alappuzha, you were able to relate somewhat. Similar things are happening on the Chavakad route for the development of Mangalore Highway. So all these things are contributing negatively. Purpose of a highway is to improve the life of people. But while implementing that, there are adverse impacts on the surrounding environment. People and properties may be in the direct path of Sahodar Nayapan Road. Sahodar Nayapan Road? Ernakulam. There was a house in the middle for a long time. Elangolam. People had to take, even after the 2 lanes were ready, there was one house which was sitting, they had obtained a stay. So vehicles used to go there, turn around and then go. After a long time, that house was removed. So people and properties may be in the direct path of roadworks. That house was in the path of this road. His life is disrupted. If that is his only property, his life is disrupted. He may be compensated, but it is disrupted. Now he has to figure out another way. He has to go and find out some other house. Same way, every time a highway is laid, there is disruption happening in people's lives. That is social impact. All these people will be displaced. It happens. When a dam is built, in the reservoir area or the catchment area, we have to displace people. When a hydroelectric power project is made, displacement is the first reaction. Hydroelectric power project is the most non-polluting form of energy generation. Hydroelectric power generation is the most non-polluting in operation, but in construction, it is the worst, because it starts with social disruption. Lives of thousands of people are disturbed. People have to vacate their houses because the catchment areas will be submerged once the dam comes in. Second is the cost of constructing a dam is not restricted to the cost of the concrete that goes in. It is also the GHG emissions on account of concrete, cement and steel. So when you evaluate, when you balance out, you have to balance from the base. Logic has to be applied everywhere. It's fundamentally logic, common sense. Just apply common sense. Where did this come from? Okay. Where did that come from? See, you say cement bag, I can buy it from the local market. But how did it reach there? 2, how was it made? That is when you calculate the total impact of a bag of cement. Milk, when 1 packet of milk comes to your doorstep, we did a project in Japan with Milma MD and all that. I made a presentation. Milma is selling black milk. The CO2 emissions due to Milma milk is so high. Right from the place where they collect in the cooperative societies to the mopeds which transport these to the collection center. From there they go into tankers. From there they go to the factories. It is heavy on CO2. But everybody cannot buy a cow, so you have to depend on Milma. So it is CO2, everything around us, if you evaluate, it just requires open eyes. Just apply logic and common sense. How did it come to my doorstep? Swiggy varunu, heavy on fossil fuel. Swiggy, Zomato ke liye. It's heavy on CO2. Even if they drive an electric bike, do you know the GHG emission impact of batteries? What is the afterlife of a battery? So think, where does it go? What is battery leaching? So many subjects for you to do research, right? So we go to the next slide, please. These are some of the impacts for you to just read. Damage to sensitive ecosystems. When you know how in olden times or in your villages, just go to your villages, you remember how houses used to be. There used to be ways, you just go around the house and then on the boundary. So you have ways which are not very straight. When roads were developed, they followed that path. They made the roads wider, but they followed that path. But because that was very heavy on fossil fuel, it is decided to make a straight line. So when it makes a straight line, it goes through the houses of 4 people. Now that happens. So along with that house, there is an ecosystem which is around that house, which may be plants, which may be a pond, which may be something else. So it's a lot of trees. All these will go. If it is a paddy field, that paddy field will have to be filled up. If it is a canal, it has to be bridged. So many things happen. Soil erosion, that's another thing which happens. I am not saying that we are not going to stop, we are going to stop highway construction. We are not. We have to be aware of what are the impacts. Why you have to be aware? Why should you be aware? So you can take steps to ensure that that impact is reduced to the best possible. It cannot be eliminated, but it can be reduced. So that's called mitigation measures. Changes to drainage pattern. Now when you construct an embankment, naturally water from the other side cannot come here. So you have to take adequate measures to ensure that water flows. Alappuzha, anybody from Alappi? Alappi, no. Alappuzha alkar edukkulla. Alappi has got a very complex system of networks of backwaters connected with the paddy fields through a series of canals which were connected to the sea. What happened is, large scale construction of houses. People have filled up all these water bodies. They have filled up ponds. They have filled up their lands. They have filled up paddy fields. What happened? It stopped the flow of water from one area to the sea. What happens in the next rain? Water does not have a way to go. Result is floods. You stop the way for water to flow and then you complain to the government that my site is getting flooded. It will, because you stop water channels. That is changes to drainage patterns and thereby groundwater. Because drainage patterns, once they are there, your groundwater is always replenished. Mannu and adiyilottu vellam povum. Water has to percolate through the soil and reach the bottom to form an aquifer. You know what an aquifer is. When you have an aquifer, you can have a well or a bore well. If you don't have water in the aquifer, it is dry. So all these things are connected. Whenever you take any action, it has got direct impact on your water supply, on your life. So it is best to take clear analysis of every step that you take. Interference with wildlife movement is basically for the big expressways that are being built. When you pass through, for example, the one that we are very familiar will be Bandipur. When you are traveling to Mysore or through Sultan Batheri to Mysore or to what is that place? Coorg. You are traveling through forest. So when you are traveling through forest, you are actually encroaching the path of elephants crossing. You are riding your vehicle along an elephant's crossing path. So you have to wait. And you say, Aana vannu. Aana ella vanna, ningala vanna. Aana was going anyways. You came. So then now elephant will be charging at you. You encroached on the elephant's property. Elephant did not come to do anything. Therefore, wild animal crossings, deer crossings, a lot of deer get hit. High speed vehicles hit deer and kill them. That's all because the deer did not cross your path. You crossed the deer's path. That is what is meant by saying interference with wildlife movement. So these are all affecting our food chain. If you remember, you said there is a complex arrangement. You start disrupting the food chain somewhere, it will affect you. It's like a cobweb. Loss of productive agricultural lands. Kannur, you know the movement. There people were trying to protect paddy fields. Alignment of land. People were trying to object to the highway alignment passing through paddy fields. Properly rich cultivation ulla paddy fields in Nadukuda highway. So there you have to mitigate. You have to save the paddy field and still have the highway. So those things have to be understood. Resettlement, we discussed that. displacement of people that happens in dams, that happens in highways, that happens even in engineering colleges. When we build resorts on the seaside, I have to displace fishermen's families. We have to buy their houses. So, when we build hospitals, we have to buy nearby houses. When we build a mall, I have to buy all the houses around so that I can create my parking. So whenever an infrastructure development happens, it creates resettlement. Now compensatory payments may be made, but resettlement is still there. So it has got a social impact. Disruption of local economic. See, now local economic activities might get a boost. Some infrastructure developments, because we follow what is called a ribbon development system, wherein whenever a road comes in, on both sides of the road, we have got commercial development. Angana, that's an improvement. So if you travel along the length of Kerala, you will find that you will have some sort of commercial activity along the entire road. But when you move just 2 steps into the by roads, you will find there is absolute rural environment, which is good. That's another method of development, which is also good. But we have to understand that local disruption is positive and negative. So there is a positive disruption happening here when you develop a road or a highway. Demographic changes is people move. When you resettle people, they may move to cities. So that causes accelerated urbanization. Go to the nearest city. So there is accelerated urbanization. So there is a housing issue. They create another problem there. Now they don't have enough money to afford an urban place, but they go there and stay there. Now there is an economic situation. So social impact of projects is very high. So all these people have to be relocated, they have to be repatriated, so many things have to be done. So these guidelines are there. I have written, these guidelines are issued by Parivesh. So you can refer that website anytime. Now, point number 2 is the whole idea. To minimize these adverse effects that may be created by highway development, techniques of environment impact assessment become necessary. Whatever we have discussed till now are the various impacts. Now, the procedure for analysis here is, there is a scientific method for tabulating all these things. So we tabulate all these properly and document it. That document is supposed to be submitted to the ministry. So we have written it should commence early in the planning process. When you are thinking of the project, at that time we should analyze all this. Take in all the values and consider the alternative. Suppose there might be an alternative. The impact is reduced. So you have to analyze both and figure out which one is lesser. The damage will be done anyway, which is least damaging. Yeah. So this is the process wherein I've taken the example of highways because we can relate very easily to it. That includes expressways. There are A category and B category. B category is the one which the states can give an approval. You can read through all these things. There is a lot of conditions, etc. Those who are interested can read through it. Go through the next slide, please. So the first stage is, every project has to go through the process of EC or environment clearance. You get this very important document called environment clearance or NOC from ministry. That is very important to build any infrastructure project. So the stage 1 is screening. In this, once we give our details to the department, there will be a consultant there, because the project proponent or the client may not necessarily know everything about the modalities of environment compliance. So there will be a consultant like us. We will be filling out the forms, and those forms will be submitted, based on which you will be screened. And we will identify whether the project requires an impact assessment being done or not. There are some projects which are exempted. They don't need to be assessed for environment impact. So we will figure out that, and then if it is required, then we go through the process. If not, then we say it is not requiring. Then we define the scope. We will go through that process also. Scoping is the process by which the activities are determined, there is a product mix of activities and detailed TOR, terms of reference are made to address all the environmental concerns. Now, in the subsequent chapters in this guideline book, all these are detailed out extensively. Now, we don't have the time for that, that's why I'm just touching upon the major points and then going through, because each point is deliberated in absolute detail in all these guidelines. Let's go to the next slide, yeah. Then there is this most important activity called public consultation. There is stakeholders meeting held every time. I gave you the example of displacement. When you are building a dam or a hydroelectric project, you are having to have villages displaced. So there are stakeholder consultations. Sometimes political figures, the MP, MLAs will be there to lead the discussions on or for or against the project. And if it is a development project, we have to make the people understand this is required, or else the people will say we don't agree. That is agitation against dams. We very frequently see in Kerala. There are a lot of agitations against dams, lot of agitations against nuclear power projects. So that is stakeholder meetings. People don't want, no problem. But that is the result of a stakeholder meeting. When you are doing a port, fisheries displacement will happen, but there the fishermen are in favor, because their livelihood will improve. So there are stakeholder discussions. All these stakeholder discussions are public consultation. Sometimes we have a road passing right through a village. So some families are this side and some families are the other side. There may be an embankment which is going to come through. So we have to call all of them and tell them, this is the road which is coming, this is the result that you will have better trade, you can commute better, this is the connectivity, are you agreeing? So we put it to vote, we take consultation. So there is a guideline that is issued, they fill up certain forms, submit it to the village officer. Then the village officer puts it forward to the district collector. So that is how the internal assessment is done. Now, roads is one case where the government can overrule all of this, because the government is doing it for the people. So these people are a part of the people. So government can overrule that. Do you know that all land in India belongs to the government? All land belongs to the government. You are merely leaseholders. Title means it's a leasehold. You are paying tax. Why are you paying tax? You are paying tax to the original owner. President of India is the owner. So government can at any moment of time take back that land. They are asking you. Otherwise they can simply take back. The rule is like that. Then once the public consultation happens, all the forms are submitted, there is the most important aspect called appraisal, where the department officials scrutinize all the submissions that we have made. Every single submission they will scrutinize. Right? And after that they'll again call us for a hearing. All the experts will be sitting. We have to make the presentation of the project. Each aspect has to be explained to them, because one will be from the oceanography, one will be from some other department, climate department. All these people have consultation. Everybody will fire questions at you, why it should be done. Chhatrapati Shivaji, Mumbai, that airport was denied EC 3 times. It's a government project, but the ministry refused 3 times before they change one, like every time they had to make some alternative. So that is where, although it appears to be restrictive, but it is regulatory in nature. So it is in a way good. So you have the development with minimal impact. Impact will be there anyways. Next slide, please. This is the process. Anybody can access this. Parivesh is the website. These are the guidelines. I have shared the link in one of the next slides. So this is the process which I explained in brief. Go to the next slide. In addition to the general guidelines for Ministry of Environment, those places which are having water bodies or coast, sea coast like Kerala, we have to fulfill all the requirements of CRZ also. So that is again, there is a separate format for that. We have to fill all the requirements, and if your site is close to a forest or a national park or sanctuary, biosphere reserve, we have several places in Kerala which are coming under restricted areas where we cannot build anything. So similarly, if there are lands, we have to identify them, show them in our application. And critically polluted areas. There we have to take CPCB, Central Pollution Control Board approval. Our state Pollution Control Board has to recommend, and then we have to go to Central Pollution Control Board. So all these things have to be done for any project too. So when you see a highway project coming up, please understand it is a considerable amount of effort which the engineers have put in to make sure that all these approvals are in place. Today in India, you cannot build a highway without all these approvals. So we have to understand all the people have gone through this entire exercise to get the approvals. Yeah, next slide please. This is the terms of reference, which is it's an elaborate document. You can read Annexure 1 in the guidelines. And I cannot elaborate each portion. I'm just highlighting the major points so that you can refer these in details. Yeah. Next slide. Validity of the EC is 5 years, right? 5 years later you have to renew it, and after we build, before we build, it is called commitment. The environment clearance is for the commitments which we make. I will do this. When I cut 100 trees, I will plant 1,000 more trees. This is my commitment. Did you plant or did you just say? That is called post-compliance reports. So ministry asks you to submit post-compliance report every 6 months. Suppose you are on a site where there are mangroves, Kandalkad. Then we have to submit photographs of the mangrove before the construction started, during the construction, at the time of inauguration, every 6 months. Because sometimes, you feel strongly that that mangrove should be removed to make a jetty. But we cannot. Because MOEF will be after you. So they will keep a check on all this. You cannot widen a river mouth. Every 6 months we have to share photographs. You cannot do anything to river basins. If you are on the side of a river basin after CRZ line, you have to share photos. Critical areas like turtle paths, you have to show them, Ama moving. We did not do anything, So that compliance is very strict now, which is a good thing, Just making a rule is not enough. You have to ensure that that rule is followed. So MOEF in that matter is very strict. You will get a notice, and the notice is not for explanation, it is usually for closure. Say close down the business or else submit the details. So once you get the EC, you must have seen in newspapers this Falana project has got an environment clearance number, this. So you have to advertise that for the simple reason that a public is aware that in your neighborhood such and such project is coming up. So, but now you cannot object because stakeholder discussion is already over and ministry has accorded the approval. So it is for information. So project management should submit half-yearly compliance report. That's what I was saying. And these reports are all public documents. Suppose I am a resident close by to a cement factory. I need to know whether they have done their compliance of scrubbing for reduction of air pollution. I can just log in online and find out if they have submitted the compliance report, and if they have written that they are scrubbing the air and it is not happening, I can go and complain. So it is a public document. So if there is change of ownership, this is administrative, like party A buys the property, does the EC, get it cleared, then he can sell it to another party, and the same project will be accorded the same clearance. You don't have to go through again. Once it is cleared, it is transferable. Generic structure of a assessment report is like this. It is about 500 pages. These are the points that you usually have in a EIA report. Let's go to the next slide. Project proponent is like when you make an application form to submit for a job, you have to give all your details, name, address, father's name, all those things. Huh? How much time is left? No, I can go on, but we have to stop. 1 o'clock? Huh? 1. Okay, I've got about 20 minutes. I'll remember finishing. So, identification of the project property is the applicant. Who are you? So, the name of the project, what is the detail of the project, all that will be there in the project proponent identification. Go to the next slide, please. That a brief description of the project. Where is it? For example, it is in Arakundam, whatever village name, 26 acres of land, what are the buildings, what is the location, region, etc. will be identified. Next slide, please. Now, sometimes what happens is there may be pending litigations against the property or the project, so you have to disclose all that. Plus, these 3 important rules, the Forest Conservation Act, Wildlife Protection Act and the CRZ notification. In Kerala, you have to follow the Wetlands Act also. So, all these should be complied. This is the, for a highway, I have just given a snapshot of that item. The status of environment clearance conditions, compliance for the existing project, road factors. Now, how much land is available? Do you need to acquire more land? The government has to decide. So, we have to say what is the land available. This is the subject of the ministry itself. So, Surface Transport Ministry will be doing this job and submitting it to the Ministry of Environment. So, it's between governments, but all these documents have to be done. Next slide, please. Now, I have just taken the 7 points which are to be highlighted in the EIA clearly. We have to describe the environment. Environment means everything. Whatever we discussed in the morning, everything is environment. Right? So, we start with land, air, noise, water, biological, socio-economic and solid waste management. All these points have to be validated. So, we need to collect baseline data first. What is the present situation? What will be the situation after our building is made or after our project is done? For that, we have called a study area. This is a study area, means where the project is going to come. Site development area. So, we have to show the distances, what is happening in the next 500 meters around us, who are living there, how many residences are there, is there any school, is there any place of worship, all these we have to highlight. So, that is the project study area. Land environment is baseline conditions of land, land use, etc. For example, if it is purely agricultural land and we are converting that into a factory or we are converting that into another commercial area. So, we have to explain all those things in the land environment. Land environment means the nature of the land. It includes the geology, climatology, relief, which is the topography of the entire land has to be earmarked. That will include all the trees also. You have to submit details which include the trees also. Water environment is drainage pattern. How does water flow through the site during rains? How does water flow through the site? Are you going to create anything which is going to stop the flow of natural water flow during rains? This applies particularly to lands which are in sloping terrain like this or hilly terrains. Then the water demand calculations, how you are going to meet the water demand. For example, there is no well, there is no bore well. How are you going to meet the water demand? Are you going to have rainwater harvest? For that you have to prove that there is enough rain. You have to prove that there is enough collection available for rainwater. How many people are going to stay there? Based on IS calculation, BIS calculations, how much water you need for the factory, for the people, for cleaning, washing, etc. to give all those details. This is air environment. Now, air environment is basically air pollution control. So, you get the basic data, what is the ambient air quality now. Whatever is the ambient air quality now, I have to either better it or retain it. So, we have to conduct tests which are going to collect samples from various parts of the site we will be collecting the air samples, assessing them for their chemical contents. What is a NO2, what is a NO, what is a CO2, what is a CO, sulfur, etc. All the chemical parameters are analyzed, and then we have to make a record. That is the baseline study. Once the baseline study is done, then we will be able to prove that after the project is completed, what is the current status. So those air samples we have to submit. Every 6 months we have to submit that. Whenever a road comes, what is going to happen? A lot of vehicles are going to pass through. They are going to create noise. Due to the movement of vehicle, due to horns, due to various other things, you will have a lot of noise. What was the present noise levels? Noise in the unit in the decibel. So ambient air noise quality will be evaluated now, when nothing is built, after our construction. For that, if there is a factory, for example, you have to ensure that the decibels generated from the factory are within CPCB guidelines, Central Pollution Control Board and Kerala State Pollution Control Board guidelines. Sometimes that is stricter than the ambient. Right? Now this is biological. Biological includes all the flora and fauna that is living there. Normally you don't build in a forest-like environment. All your land will be plain terrain. It will be either agriculture converted or plantation or something like that, or even bare land. So these kind of situations happen when you are building expressways and highways, bridges, roads, railways, airports. That is the case when these biological environments. Right now, if you know, in Bombay Metro, there is a forest area. What is the name of that forest area they are cutting down to build metro? Uddhav Thackeray had become a big issue in that, no? You don't read newspapers? RA Forest, AAREY. Just Google it and find out. You are building an infrastructure of national importance, but if you are cutting down forest for that, so how that is going to be mitigated? There is a research, there is a full paper on that. Socio-economic is what we discussed. I told you socio-economic means the societal patterns will change. That includes economics, their way of living, their means of livelihood, the schools, the place of worship, all those things will have to change. So society as a whole will undergo a change when a major infrastructure comes in. You have to analyze what is the present situation. After the construction, what will be the new situation? If there are difficulties being caused to the inhabitants now, how you are going to mitigate that? All that has to be written as commitments. And most important is solid waste. So whenever a major project comes up, you have liquid and solid waste. Liquid waste is in the water management place. We discuss how the liquid waste is managed. Here we have to discuss the solid waste management. So we have to give them a clear-cut proposal as to what is the waste going to be created and how you are going to manage it. I've just taken something because we have to explain what is the anticipated impact. Now, when vehicles move, there will be earth compaction. That is one of the impact. Erosion, there will be water flow. There will be surface level water flow and it might carry off the topsoil. So there will be topsoil erosion, which is very bad. You know, humus is the topsoil layer, which is 30 centimeters to 45 centimeters. How much time does it take for humus to be there, to become humus? It takes about 1,000 years. So when it gets washed off in a rain, that is why in green building construction, whenever we are making a building, it is important to remove the topsoil, conserve it and use that for landscape. You are not supposed to bring earth from outside. That is a principle for green building construction. So over exploitation of agriculture soils due to future, okay, those are things. Irreversible salinization, yeah. So that is one thing. If you design probably a seaside resort in which you are bringing the backwater into the land area, then you are going to increase the salinity of the soil. Plus additionally, if you are having reverse osmosis plants, you are going to have brine reject. What are you going to do with that? So that is going to increase the salinity levels of the water body around you. You will be rejecting into the local water body. It may or may not go into the mainstream. So there are mitigation measures. These are the mitigation measures. आगे भाई क्या? This is all available in the guidelines. You can download the guidelines, and I've given you two guidelines. Highways and buildings is there in the files that I copied to you. It's already there in that. So if somebody wants, they can take it directly from there. Let's go to the next one. So these are all, yeah, just take the water, yeah. Now water in construction phase, you need water to build. Concreting requires water. Where do you source the water? We have to tell them. So if there is no source, how do you bring water? Are you relying on ready mix? What is the distance of movement for ready mix? Where does it come from? All that thing we'll have to reply. So curing, what are you doing for curing? How do you reduce curing water? You are all studying concrete technology? Concrete technology. Civil engineering, concrete technology. Curing is required for concrete? Is it? How do you reduce curing water quantity? Huh? But without affecting the quality of the finished concrete, how do you reduce? Using what? Admixtures you can use. Or you can use gunny bag wrapping. Simple. You do it everywhere. There are special wrapping coats, sprays, paints which allow the water to stay in. Why is water important in concrete post casting? No, why? What is the role of water in hydration? Yes. So that is why we have to give a reply. How to reduce the quantity of water in curing? Because where there is large scale concreting, there is heavy heat generated. You need to have a lot of water. During the operational phase, what are you going to do with water? So all these things are there. Yeah, these are mitigation measures. Curing water should be sprayed, the free flow should not be allowed, liberal curing first day, painting with curing chemicals. All these things are there. So these are standard procedures which we need to adopt. Yeah, similarly there is another list of items, like we discussed 7 points, out of which I discussed only land and water here. There are other points also, noise was there, solid waste was there, so many other points were there. Similarly, there are other procedures where you can identify the hazards and the mitigation procedures. And this is the link where you can click and all these manuals are available. There are more than 30 manuals. What to do in case of cement factory, what to do in case of highway, what to do in case of factory, residential, township. Everything is mentioned in absolute crystal clear. Anybody who is willing to or intending to make a project has to read this first. Then, of course, for carrying out the administrative procedure, you may need the help of a consultant. But generally, to understand what is required, what are the impacts, because for everything there is a cost. So for a project, it is not the basic cost of the project. Environment mitigation is another cost, which usually doesn't come in estimates. So environment hazard mitigation is another cost which has to come in estimates. Next, please. Yeah, the general outlook of the process is to ensure that objectives of minimal intervention. You will intervene, you will create an impact, but keep it minimal. To the habitats, flora and fauna in the region continue to thrive. Now, if you do good landscaping, if you plant a lot of trees, natural, local fruit-bearing trees, the same birds and squirrels will come back. So this is, as we discussed, the summary of the EIA report, which is to be condensed to 10 A4 size pages. Now this is now what used to be 500 page, now we have to compress it. The whole summary has to be provided like this. And then following chapters have to be explained in detail. Lot of annexures are there. If you are interested, just go through one of the guidelines. All the annexures, there are a lot of reports to be created. All these reports will have a lot of values to be filled in and submitted. Next slide. Ah, yes. Thank you very much. So I think I have covered at a rocket speed. The environmental impact assessment procedure is usually taking 6 months to 1 year. So we took 90 minutes to at least know what is what. We have not covered anything in detail, but we have run through an awareness. Now you will be familiar with certain terms. You'll recollect, okay, there is a term like this. You may not know what it is, but you will at least be familiar with certain terms. So the whole idea of this presentation was only to, create that awareness. So those people who are more interested will certainly study more. There is a lot to do. The testing procedures are enormous. There are PhD scholars doing research and theses purely on one testing procedure in one domain. So if they are doing noise, in noise they'll be doing one, and that will be full thesis. So there is so much of work that is being done in these domains. I hope nobody has questions. എല്ലാവർക്കും എല്ലാം മനസ്സിലാകുക, അല്ലെ ആർക്കും ഒന്നും മനസ്സിലാകാതിരുന്നാലും ക്വസ്റ്റ്യൻ ഉണ്ടാവില്ല. So if there are any questions, please feel free to ask. Not all the projects. That is why we do the screening. There is a first step which is screening. In this, the EIA guidelines, the MOEF guidelines are very clear. Up to 20,000 square feet, what is a mandatory requirement. All projects have to have some kind of submission. Submission may be by the local licensed engineer. Somebody has to take responsibility, even if it is a small project. When it becomes larger projects like 2 lakh square feet and above, then it requires to go through full EIA. That is for buildings. But generally for roads, all projects, especially if it is highways, expressways, etc. So public infrastructure, all projects require EIA because they are not small, they will be very big. No? For residences, small institutions like mall, medical college requires, but small institutions like schools, etc. may not require. But generally everything now falls above 50,000 square feet, so it will have some sort of clearance required. Yes, that is the whole idea. Yeah, no relaxation, no relaxation. Sir, there was a time when we used to, about 20 years back when we used to take EIA sanctions from Delhi, that time they used to give us some breathing space. Now, after our Prime Minister 0.5 degree, Paris, if somebody is interested, you should read what is the Paris Agreement and what is India's commitment. India has committed 1.5 degrees. Now, global warming restricts that we will restrict our activities to ensure that the temperature doesn't rise by 1.5 degrees. That is the target. Because of that, in India, the government, especially at the center, is very strict about all these points. So there is no breathing space. You don't do a project. That is a simple thing. See, you require to do it only after a certain area. You are not required to do it for small projects. See, like 50,000, 1 lakh square feet and all, you don't. About 2 lakhs, you need to do it. But there is another catch. 5 crores investment or more. So which means almost all projects are 5 crores. Today there are houses which are 5 crores. Yeah. 5 crores is a normal cost. I think they have changed that. But either ways, they can come and ask. Yes. So any other question? Question. So can I conclude then? I think it is 1 o'clock, and thank you very much for patiently attempting to listen and trying to understand. Thank you.
I would like to extend our heartfelt gratitude to our esteemed speaker for shedding light on the crucial topic of environment impact assessment in infrastructure development. Your expertise has deepened our understanding, emphasizing the importance of responsible and sustainable practices. We are truly grateful for your enlightening presentation. Once again, thank you so much, sir, for sharing your expertise and inspiring us today. Now, I would like to welcome Head of the Department of Civil Engineering, Dr. Vasudev R. Sir, to hand over the momentum Now, I would like to welcome Professor Dr. Justin Moses Selvamani sir to hand over the memento to Deepa ma'am.
Just 5 minutes. ഒരുപാട് ഇൻഫർമേഷൻ ഇങ്ങനെ കേട്ട് എല്ലാവരും നിറഞ്ഞിങ്ങനെ ഇരിക്കുകയാണ്. ഐ വാസ് ജസ്റ്റ് നോട്ടീസിങ് എവറിബഡി. ഇപ്പം നമ്മുടെ സിവിൽ ഡിപ്പാർട്ട്മെൻറ്റ് ഇത്രയും നല്ല സെഷൻസ് എല്ലാവർക്കും അറേഞ്ച് ചെയ്ത് തരുന്നുണ്ട്. ആക്ച്വലി യു ആർ വെരി ലക്കി. ഞങ്ങളുടെയൊക്കെ ടൈമിലെന്ന് വെച്ച് കഴിഞ്ഞാൽ ഫോർ എവറിത്തിങ് വി ഹാവ് ടു ഗോ ടു ലൈബ്രറി ആൻഡ് റെഫർ ബുക്സ്. നിങ്ങൾക്കിപ്പം അതിന് പകരം എല്ലാം you are getting on your mobile phones. But teachers, you have to make sure that they carry a notebook and pen. എന്താണെന്ന് വെച്ചാൽ ഇന്നിപ്പോൾ ഒരു 2 മണിക്കൂർ ഇത്രയും അധികം കാര്യങ്ങൾ ഇവിടെ പറഞ്ഞു. എക്സെപ്റ്റ് 1 or 2 എല്ലാവരും ഇങ്ങനെ നോക്കിക്കൊണ്ടിരിക്കുക. നമ്മൾ ഈ റൂമിന് പുറത്തിറങ്ങിക്കഴിഞ്ഞാൽ ഈവൻ KMBR പോലും നിങ്ങൾ ഓർക്കില്ല. ഇപ്പം നിങ്ങളുടെ നെക്സ്റ്റ് ഇവിടെ ഇരിക്കുന്ന എല്ലാവരും S8 ആണ്. നെക്സ്റ്റ് എന്ന് വെച്ച് കഴിഞ്ഞാൽ യു ആർ സ്റ്റെപ്പിംഗ് ഇൻ ടു ദ ഇൻഡസ്ട്രി. ഞങ്ങളെപ്പോലുള്ള എംപ്ലോയേഴ്സിൻ്റെ അടുത്താണ് വരുന്നത്. ഞങ്ങളുടെ ഓഫീസിൽ ദർ ഇസ് എ 5-step ഇൻ്റർവ്യൂ. അതിൽ 3rd സ്റ്റെപ്പാണ് ഞാൻ ഹാൻഡിൽ ചെയ്യുന്നത്. 1ലും 2ലും പാസ്സാവുന്നവരാണ് എൻ്റെ അടുത്തേക്ക് വരുന്നത്. ഇവരുടെ എല്ലാവരുടെയും പ്രശ്നം എന്താണെന്ന് വെച്ച് കഴിഞ്ഞാൽ ഒരു മനുഷ്യരും ഒരു സംഗതികളും എഴുതിയെടുക്കില്ല. ഇപ്പം നിങ്ങൾ ഈ കൊടുക്കുന്ന ട്രെയിനിങ്ങിനകത്ത് വരുന്ന ആ ഒരു അഭാവമാണ് ഇവരൊരു ഓഫീസിൽ കയറിക്കഴിഞ്ഞാൽ ഒരു മനുഷ്യർ പോലും ഒരു സംഗതി എഴുതിയെടുക്കില്ല. അതായത് 1 മീറ്ററിനകത്ത് എത്ര മില്ലിമീറ്റർ ഉണ്ടെന്ന് ചോദിച്ചാൽ അവർക്കൊരു കാൽക്കുലേറ്റർ വേണം, അല്ലെങ്കിൽ ഒരു മൊബൈൽ വേണം അത് ചെക്ക് ചെയ്യാൻ. അതൊരു വളരെ പരിതാപകരമായൊരു സിറ്റുവേഷനാണ്. അതുകൊണ്ട് അറ്റ്ലീസ്റ്റ് S8-ലെങ്കിലും ടീച്ചേഴ്സ് യു ഹാവ് ടു മേക്ക് ഷുവർ ദാറ്റ് ദേ ടേക്ക് ഡൗൺ നോട്ട്സ്. അത് ഒരു ഓഫീസിൽ കയറുമ്പം അതിനൊരു ഇമ്പോർട്ടൻസ് ഉണ്ട്. എന്തായാലും ഞാൻ ഗ്രീൻ ബിൽഡിങ്ങിന് വേറൊരു സെഷൻ S8-ലെ സ്റ്റുഡൻസിന് വേണ്ടിയിട്ട് എടുക്കുന്നുണ്ട്. പക്ഷേ അതിനു മുമ്പ് എൻ്റെ സെഷനിൽ എനിക്കത് നിർബന്ധമുള്ള കാര്യമാണ്. കാര്യം ഇപ്പം ഇവിടെ പല റൂൾസിനെ പറ്റിയും അതൊന്നും നമുക്ക് വേണ്ടാത്ത കാര്യങ്ങളല്ല. പാസ് ഔട്ട് ആയിക്കഴിഞ്ഞ് നിങ്ങളൊരു ഓഫീസിലേക്ക് വരുമ്പോൾ ഈ വക കാര്യങ്ങൾ നിങ്ങൾക്ക് ഇന്ന് ചെന്ന് നോക്കിയാൽ മാത്രം ഇത് ഓർമ്മ നിൽക്കുകയുള്ളൂ. നിങ്ങൾ പുറത്തിറങ്ങി ഇൻസ്റ്റഗ്രാം നോക്കിക്കഴിയുമ്പം ഇവിടെ പറഞ്ഞ കാര്യങ്ങളെല്ലാം മറന്നുപോകും. ECBC എന്ന് പറഞ്ഞു. എനിക്ക് അറിഞ്ഞുകൂടെ എത്ര പേരത് കേട്ടിട്ടുണ്ട്, അതിൻ്റെ ഫുൾ ഫോം എത്ര പേര് എഴുതിയിട്ടുണ്ടെന്നുള്ളത്. ഒരാൾ മാത്രമാണ് ഒരു നോട്ട്ബുക്ക് വെച്ച് അത് എഴുതിയത്. സോ ഇന്ന് പോയിട്ട് അതൊന്ന് റെഫർ ചെയ്താൽ ഇറ്റ് വിൽ ബി ഫ്രഷ് ഇൻ യുവർ മൈൻഡ്. ഇതെല്ലാം കരിയർ ഓപ്പർച്യൂണിറ്റീസാണ്. നിങ്ങൾക്ക് ജസ്റ്റ് ഒരു ഓഫീസിൽ ചെന്ന് ഡ്രാഫ്റ്റിങ്ങോ അല്ലെങ്കിൽ ഒരു ബീം ഡിസൈൻ, സ്ലാബ് ഡിസൈൻ ഒന്നും അല്ല ഇനിയത്തെ ഫ്യൂച്ചർ എന്ന് പറയുന്നത്. ഒരുപാടധികം കരിയർ ഓപ്പർച്യൂണിറ്റീസ് ഉള്ള ഫീൽഡുകളാണ് വരുന്നത്. അപ്പോൾ അതിന് വേണ്ടിയിട്ട് ഒരുപാട് കാര്യങ്ങൾ റെഫർ ചെയ്യാനുണ്ട്. ആ റെഫർ ചെയ്യാനുള്ളതിൻ്റെ ത്രെഡാണ് ഇതുപോലുള്ള സെഷൻസിൽ തരുന്നത്. ഇപ്പം ഞങ്ങളെ പോലുള്ള പ്രൊഫഷണൽസിന് മുഴുവൻ വന്നതെന്ന് എക്സ്പ്ലെയിൻ ചെയ്യാൻ പറ്റില്ല. യു ഹാവ് ടു ഡു യുവർ പാർട്ട്, ദാറ്റ് ഈസ് റെഫറിങ്. ആ റെഫറൻസ് വരണമെന്നുണ്ട്. എവിടെ നിന്ന് റെഫർ ചെയ്യും? നിങ്ങൾക്ക് ECBC എന്നൊരു വാക്ക് കേൾക്കാനായിട്ട് ഇതുപോലുള്ളൊരു സെഷൻ മാത്രമേ പറ്റൂ. സോ യു ഹാവ് ടു ടേക്ക് ഡൗൺ നോട്ട്സ്. എന്നിട്ട് ആ വാക്കുകളാണ് നിങ്ങൾ മൊബൈലിലായിക്കോട്ടെ, പക്ഷേ അത് റെഫർ ചെയ്യാൻ എന്തെങ്കിലും ഒരു ത്രെഡ് വേണ്ടേ? അപ്പോൾ ഇത്രയും നേരം നിങ്ങളിവിടെ ഇരുന്നു, ഉച്ച കഴിഞ്ഞു. അതുപോലെ ഞാൻ പറയുന്നതെന്ന് വെച്ച് കഴിഞ്ഞാൽ ജസ്റ്റ് ആ പോയിൻറ്റ്സ് മാത്രം 1, 2, 3 ഇട്ട് ബുള്ളറ്റ്സ് ഇട്ട് എഴുതിയെടുക്കുക. വളരെയധികം കോമ്പറ്റീഷൻ ഉള്ളൊരു ഫീൽഡിലേക്കാണ് നിങ്ങൾ ഇറങ്ങുന്നത്. ശരിയാണ്, ദർ ആർ അതർ ഓപ്പർച്യൂണിറ്റീസ്, യു ക്യാൻ ഗോ ടു സോഫ്റ്റ്വെയർ ഇൻഡസ്ട്രി. ബട്ട് നിങ്ങൾ 4 വർഷം പഠിച്ചു, വേറൊരാളിൻ്റെ സീറ്റ് കളഞ്ഞിട്ടാണ് നിങ്ങളിപ്പോൾ ഇവിടെ വന്നിരിക്കുന്നത്. അതുകൊണ്ട് മേക്ക് യൂസ് ഓഫ് ദാറ്റ്. ഞാൻ പറയാം, ഒരുപാടധികം ഓപ്പർച്യൂണിറ്റീസ് ഉണ്ട്. ഇപ്പം കേരളത്തിൽ ആൾക്കാർ അവൈലബിലിറ്റി ഇല്ല. അതുകൊണ്ട് നമ്മൾ പല ജോലികളും ഡൽഹി, ബോംബെ, ബാംഗ്ലൂർ, ചെന്നൈയിലൊക്കെ കൊടുത്താണ് ചെയ്യിപ്പിക്കുന്നത്. അപ്പോൾ കുട്ടികളിൽ അതിലൊരു ആ ഒരു ഇൻട്രസ്റ്റ് വരണമെന്നുണ്ടെങ്കിൽ കൂടുതൽ കൂടുതൽ അവർ വായിക്കുകയും പഠിക്കുകയും ഒക്കെ വേണം. ഓക്കെ, താങ്ക് യു.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for your valuable words. Now, I request everyone to gather forward for a photo session.